everybody, I'm Loki and welcome back to Valair. In today's video I'm going to talk about how I judge success and failure in my campaigns. This is quite a big topic and something that I don't think I've really covered before on the channel, but I think it's a pretty interesting subject and my players really like how I run difficulty classes, DCs in my campaigns. So let's cover it. As always, make sure you guys hit the like button on this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already to keep up to date with all of my latest videos. We're getting really close to 3,000 subscribers right now, and I've been in the 2,000s now for quite a few months, so I'm really excited to see that number change. Let's get back onto the topic, and thank you very much, guys. Most Dungeon Masters I've seen set specific DCs that their players need to beat. These DCs, at least in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, can range from 5 all the way up to 30, which is classified as nearly impossible. In my favourite OSR game, Shadowdark, the DCs vary from 9 all the way up to 18. If the player doesn't beat the DC, then they failed and a suitable outcome will occur. This can vary, but it's usually not good for the player who rolled the dice. I've seen games where if a player fails one check, their character is basically dead, or the punishment for failure is so high and so bad that the player is left feeling deflated at the table. Let me explain to you guys how I run DCs and challenges in my campaigns, and maybe some of you guys do this too, so let me know if you already do what I do. Let's start off with a role-playing example. Lucien Cavalier is the leader of the Phoenix Company, and he's the party face of my Saturday campaign that I'm running currently. He's playing a Paladin of Conquest. Pretty cool, huh? Lucien has been given the job by the local mercenary guild to clear out a goblin nest in the area, but his company is quite low on manpower since losing a few hirelings in the previous adventure. Not many of the locals want to join now, as the company's reputation has been tarnished by the deaths of the hired help in the past. So instead, he's reaching out to a local lord, requesting support in defeating the goblins that are on the lord's land. The lord of this specific territory is quite blunt, and he's a bit of an arrogant man. He spends much of his time carousing and cavorting with other members of the nobility and has little understanding of military affairs. Other than that, he does not know much of Lucien or his company, and therefore is neutral and needs to be persuaded to allow the enlistment of any of his men as potential hirelings for Lucien and his company to recruit. The DC off the bat for this role-playing exchange is set to 15, which is pretty high. Most exchanges are likely to start off at DC 10 or maybe even DC 5, depending on the system that you're playing. Lucien introduces himself, stating his rank as captain, and compliments the lord on his beautiful home. He is asked by the dungeon master, me, to roll a persuasion check, DC 15, to begin the discussion and negotiation. He rolls a 12. That's a failure, because remember the DC was 15, but he doesn't fail by much. This is reflected in the continuation of this conversation. I would then say the Lord is not entirely receptive to this flattery, but is willing to continue to hear you out. The DC for the exchange has now been shifted from 15 to 20 because of this failure, which will now create a larger gap for Lucien to overcome in the next segment of conversation. This jump represents the next level of difficulty class, DC, at least in Dungeons & Dragons. In Shadowdark, if the starting DC was 12, I jump it up to 15 because it goes up in multiplications of 3. The Lord now says broadly why the captain has sought an audience, before asking his servant to pour him a drink. Lucien explains the situation regarding the goblins, and requests the support of the Lord and his men. He states that he is unable to pay the Lord, but appeals to his sense of honour and vanity, claiming that a lord who helps his subjects will be admired across the land. Lucien is well aware of the lord's personality based on rumours that other members of his company have discovered in the nearby bars and taverns. Lucien rolls another persuasion check, and this time has advantage because of the intel that they've gained, and rolls a 21, including modifiers. Terrific. The Lord nods his head with a smile on their face, asking the captain to explain their plan and how many men they will need. The DC has now lowered back to its original number because of this high level of success, meaning that for the next and likely final challenge, only a 15 is needed. This is likely to be the last check, and it's an opportunity for Lucien to really sell himself to the Lord and finish strong. Because whilst yes, the Lord is receptive and listening to the captain, he hasn't officially agreed to do anything yet. Lucien shares his plans to attack the goblin nest from the 2 entrances that are available in a pincer movement, stating that Lord's men will be used to buff the company's existing members, which includes the rest of the party, which are level 4 specifically, and claims that if everything goes according to plan, the nest will be exterminated by the end of the week. Lucien is now told by me to roll his final persuasion check, and rolls a 15 dead on. The Lord nods and agrees to provide several men-at-arms for this mission, as long as Lucien pays their wages of 2 gold pieces per day. One of these men will be a standard bearer, carrying the colours of the Lord's house, and that's pretty much it. If he had rolled higher on that final check, or had crit on a previous roll, perhaps the terms would have been a bit more favourable, but that's pretty good, all things considered. Lucien feels this is more than reasonable and shakes the Lord's hand, binding the agreement. As you can see from the exchange, the DC of the challenge changed based on the statements that the player made as well as the result from the charisma check. This is personally my favourite way of doing it, as it allows conversation to flow more naturally and freely and create tension when appropriate based on what's being said and what's being rolled. In my campaigns, if a player fails a check in a role-playing scenario by 10 or more, the conversation is basically over. This is impossible to happen on the first dice if the DC is DC 10, but if your player was to roll a natural 1, I would raise the DC of the following check by 10 instead of 5. Meaning that if you start off a role-playing scenario on DC 10, you roll on that 1, it's going straight up to 20. It goes from being an easy scenario to a very hard scenario. Or actually, I think it's hard. I think DC 20 is hard, and yeah, 15 is medium. Yeah, that is correct. That is correct. Now let's use this system for an athletics challenge, to leap over a 15-foot wide chasm. Some DMs just let their players climb or leap over things if their strength score is high enough, but I dislike the idea that things can just be hand waved, especially things where there could be a chance of failure. Let's say Serge here, who is another member of the Phoenix Company, wants to leap over the chasm. Well, he's a strength-based fighter, so he's probably got the jump requirements to just do this. The DC for him is set at 10, which in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition is classified as easy. If he succeeds, he clears the chasm and lands on the other side. Pretty simple, right? Serge rolls this check and rolls a 6, meaning he has failed. He jumps too early and finds himself not reaching the other side, instead slamming into the jagged cliffs that descend down into the darkness. He's not dead yet, and the challenge continues with the DC changing from 10 to 15 due to his failure. As a Dungeon Master, I decide what happens, and in my mind, Serge has the opportunity to catch the cliff face and hang from it with his hands. I ask him for an additional athletics check. This time, he succeeds with an 18. he manages to hang on to the cliffs, looking for help from the rest of the party. The DC, because he has succeeded, now goes back down to 10 again. But if Serge fails his next check by a considerable margin, which is, 10 or more, or 10 or less even, if he rolls a natural 1 or something really, really low, he could be as good as dead. Fortunately, the party has watched this happen and are now scrambling to help. Lucien, who you guys have heard from before, leaps to the other side, rolling a 17 on his athletics check, and tosses a rope down towards Serge, offering him the help action or advantage based on your system of choice. Now Serge can grab the rope and try to climb the wall to safety whilst Lucien holds it. Serge rolls an 8 and a 15. The 15 is his higher roll and means that he has succeeded. It's fortunate that Lucien came to Serge's aid, otherwise he would have been dead. Serge scales the rock wall and finds himself safe on the other side. In both examples, the system worked pretty much identically. The only difference is that in the jump encounter, if he had succeeded on the first check, it would have been done. Right? It only continued because of the failure. And this system allows for progressional storytelling, which I think is incredibly important in the games that we are running. This is because we are trying to tell a story with our players, and one dice roll, unless you're doing save or die mechanics, shouldn't really be the end of that story. Thanks for watching today's video. I've been wanting to cover this topic for a while now, but I just wasn't too sure whether it would be received well by you guys, and then it would get the kind of acknowledgement that it deserves. Make sure you guys join our public Discord if you haven't already, if you'd like to get involved in our conversations that we have on there. Thanks for watching today's video. I'll see you guys next time on Loki's Lair. Until then.